In addition, they control the narrative. Controlling the narrative is a form of spiritual warfare. How the story is told, it determines how the people will respond. Okay? And so what happens in an unhealthy situation is someone will try and set what I like to call a negative narrative. Set a negative narrative, and then all the data is interpreted through the negative narrative. It's a form of lying, and it's a form of dominating and controlling. Proverbs says the first person to tell their story sounds right till you hear the other side. How many of you have learned this as a dad? You got kids. One kid runs in, tell me what happened. You're like, well, let me check. Let me check with the other kid. Because just because you heard one side of the story, it's not always the same side of the story. I'll give you an example that comes to mind. Some years ago, my son, I had a kid at our house. Kid came running in. Our kids were little. And the kids cried, throwing a fit, all hurt. Mom looks at him. What happened? Pastor Mark's kid punched me. The mom looks at me. She's like, your kid hit my kid. What are you going to do? I said, well, let me go ask why. I got to research. I go in, and my son is there, and his little sister is crying. Very big tears. She's physically hurt, not just emotionally, physically, emotionally hurt. I said, what happened? He said, that big kid kept picking on my little sister, hit her, shoved her, yelled at her. I told her, you stop picking on my sister or I'm gonna punch you. And he kept picking on her, so I punched him. Hey, so his name was Jezebel. And so then the mom looks at me, she's like, your kid hit my kid, what are you gonna do? I said, I'll be back in a minute, I'm gonna get him ice cream. Yeah, see, it's like they get a reward. See, we build men up to bless women and children, and that starts with little men. Okay? And so what happens is if you control the narrative, everybody runs to a conclusion, but actually the person who's innocent could be the one who gets punished. This happens all the time. It just comes to mind again. There's another story in the Old Testament, a guy named Joseph. Okay, is he Ahab, Jezebel, or Elijah? He's Elijah. Potiphar's wife, Ahab, Jezebel, or Elijah? Jezebel. Every day, he's in the castle, she shows up, she's like, let's do it. And no, I can't do that. I love God and I love your husband. So then she says he raped her. He goes to prison. That's the narrative. He was innocent. He was Elijah, she was Jezebel. He didn't do anything. She lied about everything. What a Jezebel likes to do is get very emotional, very loud, tell their story first, get on social media, make sure they're setting the story because it's a form of control. She does this with Naboth. Again, back to the story in 1 Kings. Naboth cursed God and the king. Therefore, he needs to die. That's not the story, but that's the story that she told. They also love to control a mob. They like to get as many people in as possible. It's a troop buildup for the battle. If you have a conflict with a Jezebel, next thing you know, you're like, man, they called all the relatives, they sent out emails, they posted on social media. Like, man, they just set this thing on fire. Like we didn't even talk about it or work it out. They just immediately went 0 to 60 in public. Well, that's what Jezebel does. She goes out and she literally pays 850 false prophets of Asherah and Baal. She gets a mob together, and then what she wants is that mob to have a larger mob of those who are watching join them in all attacking Elijah. So she's like, I'm gonna get my big mob, and I want them to go get a really big mob so we can all destroy Elijah. It's controlling the mob. In addition, a Jezebel will control the agenda. If you're dealing with a Jezebel, if you go to talk to them about something, they're gonna change the subject and set the agenda. If you're trying to do Christmas with a Jezebel and their extended family, they are gonna tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna be here at 8, we're all gonna open gifts, then we're gonna have ham, then we're gonna do this. You're like, well, can we talk about it? No, I've got this, here it is. I wrote it down, do what you're told. Just a question that comes to mind. How many of you moved here to Arizona from another state? Okay, now put your hand down. Don't put your hand up. But how many of you, it's because you had a Jezebel in your family and you moved? Because, okay, some guys just put their hand up. So those are the Elijahs. So now we know what the truth is. But sometimes you're like, if I'm around, they just control. They control the agenda. They call me. We're going to talk now. We're going to meet now. We're coming over. It's the holidays. It's like, you don't get to control the agenda of our relationship. You don't get to control my calendar. You don't get to control my budget. You're not God. You're not sovereign. I didn't surrender my life to you. This is Antichrist. This is someone who's saying, I read in the Bible about a sovereign and I thought I should nominate myself.